January 11, 1944, B-17 bombers from the 401st Bomb Group are returning from hitting Messerschmitt production plants deep inside Germany. They've already lost 4 aircraft. Now 30 German fighters are closing in for the kill. The bomber crews watch helplessly as a single P-51 Mustang breaks formation and charges directly into the swarm of enemy aircraft. For the next 30 minutes, that lone American pilot fights off the entire Luftwaffe formation by himself. The bomber crews made it home. That pilot became the only fighter pilot in the European theater awarded the Medal of Honor. Welcome to Flight Deck. Today we're breaking down the most remarkable fighter pilot action of World War II, when Major James Howard single-handedly protected an entire bomber formation for half an hour against overwhelming odds. The tactical decisions he made that day changed how fighter escorts operated for the rest of the war. The mission started badly from the beginning. On January 11, 1944, the 401st Bomb Group was tasked with bombing Me-110 fighter production plants at Oschersleben and Halberstadt. These were strategic targets. The twin-engine Me-100s were shredding Allied bomber formations. Taking out their production facilities would save American lives. But the target sat deep inside German territory, requiring hours of flight time through hostile airspace. The 401st was still relatively new to combat operations. This was only their 14th mission. They'd been lucky so far with minimal losses, but German defenses around aircraft production facilities were always heavy. Fighter controllers knew exactly where bombers would strike and positioned interceptors accordingly. The Luftwaffe would be waiting. The bomber stream reached the target and dropped their ordnance successfully. 4 aircraft went down during the bomb run, a heavy toll, but within acceptable losses for hitting such critical targets. Now came the dangerous part, the return flight home. German fighters had time to refuel and rearm. They'd be hunting damaged stragglers and formations separated from their escorts. Major James Howard was leading a group of P-51 Mustangs providing fighter cover. Howard wasn't typical fighter pilot material by conventional standards. He'd started his career as a naval aviator before joining the American volunteer group, the famous Flying Tigers, in China. Fighting Japanese Zeros over Burma taught him aggressive tactics and situational awareness that formal training often missed. When America entered the war, Howard transferred to the Army Air Forces and brought his unconventional combat experience with him. As the bombers turned for home, Howard's wingman and the rest of his squadron became separated during maneuvering. This happened frequently in combat. Tight formations broke apart during engagement with enemy aircraft. Pilots lost sight of each other in clouds or while focusing on threats. Standard procedure was to rejoin your unit and maintain mutual support. A lone fighter was vulnerable. Howard saw the problem differently. Those B-17s were heading home without adequate fighter coverage. He was flying a P-51B Mustang he'd named Ding Hao, Chinese slang meaning number 1 or very good. The aircraft was relatively new to operational service but had already proven superior to anything Germany fielded. Howard trusted his aircraft's capabilities completely. Then he spotted them. More than 30 German fighters positioning for attack runs on the bomber formation. The tactical situation was impossible by any reasonable assessment. 1 fighter against 30-plus adversaries. No backup. No element of surprise. The Germans had altitude advantage and numerical superiority. Any tactical manual would say break off and rejoin your squadron. Howard charged directly into the enemy formation. Understanding what happened next requires knowing how fighter escort tactics evolved during the war. Early doctrine emphasized staying close to bombers at all times. Fighters flew tight patterns around the bomber boxes, only engaging enemies that directly threatened the formation. This defensive mindset gave initiative to German fighters. They could probe defenses, choose engagement timing, and focus on isolated bombers. Howard's experience with the Flying Tigers taught different lessons. Aggressive offense disrupts enemy attack patterns. A single determined fighter attacking from unexpected angles forces defensive reactions. Fighter pilots worry about threats to themselves before targeting bombers. By inserting himself between the German formation and the B-17s, Howard made himself the primary threat that required dealing with. The P-51's performance characteristics enabled this aggressive tactic. The Mustang could match or exceed ME-109 and FW-190 performance in most flight regimes. Powered by the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine producing 1,490 horsepower, the P-51B could hit 440 miles per hour in level flight. It climbed well, turned competitively, and carried enough ammunition for extended combat. Most importantly, it could sustain high-speed maneuvering without sacrificing energy state, critical when outnumbered. For 30 minutes, Howard engaged the German fighters continuously. He attacked from multiple angles, forcing enemy pilots to break off their bomber attack runs and defend themselves. When Germans tried coordinating attacks against him, he used the P-51's speed advantage to disengage temporarily and reposition. Then he'd attack again from a different vector. The bomber crews watched this display with amazement. They'd never seen anything like it. Fighter escorts normally provided area coverage, intercepting threats as they developed. Howard was everywhere simultaneously. He'd appear behind a Me-10-9 lining up on a bomber, force it to break off, then immediately engage an FW-19-0 attacking from another quarter. The Germans couldn't maintain organized attack patterns with this aggressive interference. Howard shot down 3 confirmed enemy aircraft during the engagement and damaged at least 1 more. But the kill count wasn't the significant achievement. He completely disrupted 30-plus German fighters from executing coordinated attacks on the bomber formation for half an hour. Every bomber that made it home represented 10 crewmen who survived because one fighter pilot refused to abandon them despite impossible odds. When Howard finally had to break off due to fuel state, the bombers were approaching friendly territory with fighter coverage increasing. The 401st lost 4 aircraft during the bomb run, but no additional losses during the return flight despite heavy German fighter presence. Under normal circumstances, they would have lost significantly more aircraft during the vulnerable egress phase. After landing, Howard's actions generated immediate reaction from the bomber crews. Major Allison Brooks, group leader for the 401st's mission, called him a one-man air force. Colonel Harold Bowman, the unit's commander, immediately wanted to know the identity of the Mustang pilot who'd saved his formation from disaster. When bomber crews debriefed, multiple aircraft reported the same lone P-51 engaging enemy fighters throughout their return flight. The story reached newspapers within a week. The New York Times ran it on January 19, 1944, identifying Howard and describing how he fought off approximately 30 German fighters for more than 30 minutes while protecting 8th Air Force bomber formations. The American public needed heroic stories during the war's darkest periods. Howard's action provided exactly that narrative. Military leadership recognized the tactical significance beyond the individual heroism. Howard's aggressive escort tactics demonstrated that properly flown fighters could dominate airspace even when outnumbered. The key was maintaining offensive pressure that forced enemies into defensive reactions. This thinking influenced how fighter groups approached bomber escort missions for the rest of the war. The Medal of Honor nomination came quickly. Fighter pilots rarely received America's highest military decoration. The nature of air combat made witness verification difficult. Gun camera footage could confirm kills but didn't capture the broader tactical picture. Howard's case was unusual because dozens of bomber crew members witnessed his actions over extended time. Their corroborating statements provided the detailed documentation required for Medal of Honor consideration. The citation read, "For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty in action with the enemy near Oschersleben, Germany, on the 11th of January, 1944. It described how Howard led his P-51 group providing support for heavy bombers on a long-range mission deep in enemy territory, then single-handedly engaged approximately 30 enemy aircraft for more than 30 minutes while separated from his squadron. Howard became the only fighter pilot awarded the Medal of Honor in World War II's European theater. The rarity of the award among fighter pilots reflects both the difficulty of documenting individual actions and the high standards required. Many pilots performed extraordinarily during the war. Howard's combination of impossible odds, extended duration, and verified mission success met the threshold for the nation's highest recognition, the P-51B Mustang. Howard flew that day deserves recognition as well. The aircraft design made his tactics possible. Earlier, American fighters lacked the performance characteristics needed to dominate German fighters in extended engagements. The P-38 Lightning was heavy and less maneuverable. The P-47 Thunderbolt excelled at high altitude but struggled in turning fights. The P-51's combination of speed, maneuverability, and range created the platform that skilled pilots could leverage against superior numbers. The Rolls-Royce Merlin engine was critical to this performance. British engineers had perfected high-altitude supercharger technology that maintained power output at altitudes where German fighters operated. American manufacturers produced Merlin engines under license as the Packard 5-1650. Installing this power plant in the P-51 airframe created synergy between British engine technology and American aerodynamic design. Howard's P-51B also featured improved cockpit visibility compared to earlier variants. The bubble canopy provided excellent situational awareness during high-speed maneuvering. When fighting outnumbered, knowing where every threat is located becomes survival critical. Howard needed to track 30-plus aircraft simultaneously while managing his own energy state and ammunition conservation. The P-51's visibility characteristics enabled this complex mental workload. After this mission, Howard's reputation as a fighter pilot was established. He became the 354th Fighter Group's first ace and the first Merlin Mustang fighter ace in American service. Other pilots studied his tactics and adapted them to their own flying. The aggressive offense approach he demonstrated influenced how fighter groups approached bomber escort missions throughout 1944 and 1945. Fighter doctrine changed significantly after actions like Howard's proved new tactics worked. By mid-1944, fighter groups received orders to pursue and destroy enemy aircraft rather than simply driving them away from bombers. Pilots could now hunt German fighters aggressively instead of maintaining tight defensive positions. This offensive mindset accelerated the destruction of the Luftwaffe's experienced pilot cadre. Howard survived the war and continued his military career, eventually rising to brigadier general. He remained modest about his Medal of Honor action, typically deflecting attention to the bomber crews he was protecting and the quality of the P-51 aircraft he was flying. Fellow pilots recognized his combat skill and tactical thinking as exceptional. So how did one P-51 pilot hold off 30 German fighters for 30 minutes? Superior aircraft performance provided the capability. Years of unconventional combat experience in China provided the tactical mindset. Aggressive offensive action disrupted enemy attack coordination, and absolute commitment to protecting the bomber crews meant refusing to abandon them regardless of odds. The bomber crews of the 401st Bomb Group made it home that day because one fighter pilot decided impossible odds weren't sufficient reason to leave them unprotected. The tactical principles Howard demonstrated, offensive aggression, energy management, and threat disruption became standard fighter doctrine that helped win air superiority over Europe. What surprises you most about this engagement? The 30-minute duration, the numerical odds, or the fact that only one fighter pilot in the European theater received the Medal of Honor? Let me know in the comments. If you want more deep dives into combat aviation tactics and the pilots who made history, subscribe to Flight Deck.